Welcome in, everybody, to the Bleacher Brothers Sports Network. Robbie Lastella here, and we've got an action-packed episode for you guys talking Sweet 16, Elite 8, Round 32, Round 64. We've got two guests for you today. First up, from multiple different outlets, but most notably Vandy 247 and Hoops HQ, we've got Joey Dwyer. Joey, via audio, thank you for joining us. How's it going?
Good, man. Next time you'll be able to see my face, but on Lipscomb's campus right now, just got out of class. So, yeah, it's the most wonderful time of the year, man. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely, absolutely. You got to double dip both of your main coverage teams, I guess you could say. Vandy and Lipscomb qualified for the tournament. How was that for you? Getting to cover both of them. I mean, I don't know if you covered both games, but both of them making it. And were you expecting that going into this year at all?
I thought there was a chance that one of them would go. Lipscomb had the clearer path, I thought. Obviously, the ASUN was as down as it's been in the last 5 or so years, and you felt like with a bunch of returners, they had a chance to do it. But that program has so often not gotten over the hump. For one reason or another, something's always gone catastrophically wrong when it matters the most. But this year, they finally got it, and I think regardless of how it turned out in the tournament, it's a huge step forward for them. And it's only happened twice in school history, so that's something that they've really got to embrace. And I think there was some criticism of them, like I guess the mentality of we're happy to be here, and it really wasn't. It wasn't out of line because they are happy to be there. They've never been there before, right? So I think it was a really cool thing to see Lenny Acuff finally do it. And Vanderbilt, one of the best turnaround stories in college basketball this year, obviously picked 16th in the league, a first year coach with an entirely new roster. Stuff like that just really doesn't happen much in college basketball where they go, and especially at a place like Vanderbilt are able to have success right away. So it was a great year for Nashville basketball, and not to mention Belmont was right there too, the Final Four of the MVC, and a couple calls that I think Belmont would have liked back went against them, and obviously Drake went on to win the whole thing. So a good year for Nashville basketball, and teams that had been right there. And Vandy went to two NITs in the last 3 years. Lipscomb right there in the ASUN tournament. Maybe had better teams in the past that didn't make it. They finally made it this year. So it was a pretty fulfilling month for Nashville basketball fans, I would say.
Yeah, no, definitely. I don't think Drake was surrendering that one to Belmont, but they were right in there too, as you mentioned. And so you were in Ohio for Vanderbilt St. Mary's, I'm assuming, and so you also saw Bama versus Robert Morris. What was this weekend like? Obviously, St. Mary's comes out with the close defeat over Vandy, but would you say that between Vandy and St. Mary's, that was still a pretty good fight from Vanderbilt?
Yeah, I would say so. I think Vanderbilt looked like the better team for a lot of spurts of that game, but kind of what I wrote was like the more experienced team, the older team, the team that knew how to win, looked like it towards the end of that game. Vanderbilt kind of spiraled out of control there at the end and looked like a group of newcomers that hadn't played together for more than a year, where St. Mary's looked like a bunch of old guys who knew exactly what they wanted to do every time down the floor. They knew who was getting the ball and who wanted to get to what spot. It just felt like they were the more impressive team, even if they weren't the more talented team. And I think that was reflected in the result. Just thought it was a really good weekend of basketball in Cleveland. Obviously, Michigan State putting on a show against Bryant, and I wasn't there on Sunday, but it just seems like Michigan State and Alabama, both teams that could do some things. And Robert Morris, man, if they would have pulled that out, they would have been the story of the first round. They have the athleticism, and that's a really good basketball team that obviously is going to be torn apart after this year, but they should be proud of the fight they put up against Alabama, which honestly I think is probably a top two or three most talented team in the country, even if their resume doesn't necessarily show it.
Yeah, I'll get into this with Isaac amid Major Madness, but like you said, Robert Morris was 9 points away from all of us. People are talking about college basketball being doomed, but they were 9 points away from college basketball being amazing again. So
Mhm.
I feel like this weekend it wasn't as bad as people wanted to make it out. There was just a lack of upsets, but St. Mary's, I thought they were going to be this year's I guess, darling, but then they get out and then they kind of get blown out by Bama in the second round. What did you see out of Alabama when Vandy played them this year? And are they potentially a threat here to kind of make it to the Final Four? Could they upset Duke?
I certainly think so. I don't know that I would necessarily bet on it, but man, they just have so many guys who can play, and they have so much length and size, so much athleticism, so much off the dribble scoring. I think teams like that go far, especially when their core from a Final Four team last year is all back, right? Like Grant Nelson had an amazing NCAA tournament last year. Mark Sears was preseason player of the year in the SEC. Like these are elite level guys, and I think they really kind of pay the price for their style at times. But also, when they've got it going, there's nobody in the country that can beat them. Maybe Florida can beat them because obviously Florida ran them off the floor at Bridgestone Arena a few weeks ago. But man, I just don't see many teams out there that are more talented than them. And there's probably a few. I think Duke's probably more talented in Florida as well. But just looking player by player, there's not many teams that necessarily match up with them well. And I think NATO is one of the best X's and O's guys in the country. They all know what they're gonna do. It's almost like controlled chaos. Like they go down the floor and it looks wild, but there's a sense of rhythm to it, and it's a pretty thing to watch when it's going. And when they have Grant Nelson back closer to 100% this weekend, I think that'll be pretty helpful for them as well.
Yeah, I'm looking ahead towards Duke, but they got a tough matchup in BYU. I think BYU's getting underlooked a little bit. They've got a lot of money that they spend on their team as well. But speaking of a lot of money, Arkansas, the $1 million roster, they've turned it around. You've covered the SEC all year. Did you see an Arkansas Sweet 16 coming?
I'm gonna sound I didn't have to put this on the record, so it's gonna sound uh, hindsight 2020 ish. But I thought that they were totally a team that was gonna play well when it mattered the most. And Cal teams haven't really done that recently, but it's a bunch of older guys, and I think maybe the best thing that happened to them throughout the course of the year was Boogie Fland going out. It allowed them to find some rhythm, and Boogie Fland, I think, coming back, you were kind of worried, like, man, is Boogie Fland gonna throw a wrench in this thing? And man, he's been really unselfish and he's kind of played his role as well. So I think a veteran Cal team is a tough team to beat this time of year. And you mentioned it, like the $1 million roster, they're really talented, and it wasn't always showing throughout the year, but I think they're one of the more talented teams in the league. I picked them, I think, sixth in the league in the preseason, and obviously didn't hit that mark. But I stand by that pick because of the talent they had on their roster, and it's not young Cal talent like they normally have. It's old guys. It's Trevon Brazile. It's Nelly Davis, who you know well. So I was betting on them to at least be playing their best basketball this time of year. I have a hard time in the preseason kind of thinking, man, that's a Sweet 16 team or whatever. I look more in the league standings, but I figured that at some point Arkansas was going to get rolling, and heading into the SEC tournament, they'd won like 6 of 7. So, Robbie, they're rolling.
They are rolling indeed, and it's going to sound like hindsight here, but I actually thought they had a chance to beat St. John's if they got the game they got. I mean, if St. John's was shooting the ball the way they did against Omaha, then I didn't think Arkansas had a chance. But if they got one of the typical St. John's games where they're missing 70% of their threes more, I thought they had a chance, and they did. And the fouls in that game was ridiculous, but that's going to happen, and we'll see what happens. I think getting a Duthero back, even for what is it? I think he said like 15 minutes a game. I think that may be enough to kind of help them in this game get past Texas Tech. They're at Texas Tech's talented, but I don't know. They've got Cal, and we'll see. But that would be an upset. But the upset that I'm really looking at this week is Ole Miss over Michigan State. Chris Beard's doing it again. And I don't know if Michigan State just hasn't. They've got a lot of athleticism, but Ole Miss has that too. I'm curious. What do you think about this game, Joey?
Yeah, I think the thing with Michigan State, obviously the guard depth is a story. Jeremy Fears, Trey Holloman, they've got a lot of guys who can put it on the floor and get their own shot, and a lot of old guys who know what to do. But I wonder about the front court. I think that's the real story here. Like Jackson Kohler and Carson Cooper, I think are probably maybe not as maybe not as skilled as Ole Miss's bigs, but I think they're bigger and more athletic and can maybe post Ole Miss with some things that it hasn't seen throughout the year. But I mean, they're in the SEC. I think they've seen that enough to be able to get used to it. And a guy I know well, Malik Dia from Belmont and from Vanderbilt, I think has always kind of played well in the bigger games, and not to mention Ole Miss has older guards as well with Juju Murray and Sean Padula. So I'm gonna guess that Ole Miss is gonna be in this game, but you never really want to bet against Tom Izzo in the Sweet 16. I think that's a lesson that I've learned too much. I don't think this is one of his best teams. I don't think they have a Cassius Winston or anything like that. I think they've got a couple solid guys with Holloman and Fears and Jaden Akins, but I just think that their teams just always seem to channel the right stuff at the right time. And obviously Beard has a great track record as well, but I'm gonna guess the front court probably wins out for Michigan, and maybe the experience does as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be Big Ten versus SEC this weekend. I mean, whether it's that game or whether it's Michigan versus Auburn, so one side's either going to be the SEC fans are going to be all over the Big Ten fans, or the Big Ten fans are going to be all over the SEC. And I think both of these games are even, and I don't really think it's going to be like a bragging rights type of game. I think it's going to come down to the wire for both of them. But with Michigan against Auburn, I'm interested to kind of if Michigan's guards can kind of play up to the level that Auburn's are doing every game, even Pettiford as a freshman. I think Michigan's got a chance with the way Golden can match up against Janai. But what do you see in that game, Joey? And is Auburn just kind of too unstoppable at this point?
I think I see a crap ton of storylines here. Trey Donaldson against Auburn, obviously a big factor on their team last year, and you look at the way Auburn ended their season last year with the loss to Yale and Danny Wolf, right? So that's going to be a really fun matchup with a lot of storylines in it. And I think there's been a narrative around Janai Broom and him being a little undersized, and if he can put it to Vlad Golden and show that you don't really need to be a 7-footer to be effective this deep into the tournament, I think that would be a storyline to follow as well. But I'm not quite sure I trust either team's guard play. I think Auburn's got some good ones, Pettiford and Kelly, and I think they're fine. I don't think I'm as worried as I was last year. I thought Yale was going to beat them because of their guard play being vulnerable last year, but I also don't know that Michigan's guard play is miles better than Auburn's. I actually think Auburn's is a little bit better. So we'll see, but I don't fully trust Auburn. I think they're good enough to beat Michigan, though, and maybe to do it by 5 to 10 points. And like you said, I do think both these games will be close-ish at the very least.
Yeah, I mean, every coach I've heard multiple coaches talk about how good Auburn is, and if it's not, if everyone is saying it, I feel like it's got to be true. But at some point, March Madness is going to have to happen. Maybe it's in this game that the number one goes down. We'll see. But in terms of a non-number one game, we'll get to Florida last, but the SEC versus SEC, Kentucky versus Tennessee. I mean, how about the job Mark Pope has done flipping Kentucky around? People talk about how hard it is to build a roster in overnight. He's done it. They're in the Sweet 16, and Tennessee's had a really good year, but once it gets this late, Rick Barnes has had some trouble. So I think this is a game Kentucky can win, and obviously, Joey, I want to hear what you think because you know more about the SEC than I do.
I mean, I would totally think Kentucky's got a chance here. It feels like Kentucky has been one of the more improbable runs here, not only because of how they've turned it around, but well, not turned it around, but because of how they've pieced it together off of not really having a roster at this time last year. But also, you're looking at it and saying, man, they've got killed by injuries. Jackson Robinson is done for the year. He's one of the best scorers in the league. Kirk Kriisa, I think, was a real spark for them. And obviously, he hasn't been around basically the entirety of the season. Lamont Butler playing with one shoulder at this point, and Travis Perry's banged up. They're playing Colin Chandler, staying near 25 minutes, and the guy hasn't played for over half the season, and he's stepping up and giving them good minutes. I mean, what Kentucky has done is really impressive, and I think they have more of a tournament style build at this stage than Tennessee does. I think they've got more shot creation. I don't know that they have a ton more length and size, but it just feels like there's more athleticism on the floor when you watch Kentucky play. The pace they play, I think, maybe affects the other team more. I think Tennessee's good. I think Kai Ziegler is never a guy you want to bet against in the Sweet 16. Chaz Lanier, one of the best shooters in the league. But for every answer that Tennessee would have for Kentucky, I feel like Kentucky's got one for them. Amari Williams, the length and size he has. Robbie, how about Illinois trying to drive it on him every play? I didn't understand that at all. The best shot blocker on the floor and a guy who can move his feet. You're going after him. I'm not sure that's the idea, but I'm going with Kentucky in this one. I think Tennessee's really good. I have a lot of respect for Rick Barnes, but I just feel like Kentucky's peaking at the right time. That was a really good Illinois team they just beat that I think had a chance to really make a run if they had beaten Kentucky in that game.
Well, that's Illinois. That's the booty ball they like to play. They're going to back it down. They're going to try to get in against anybody, and sometimes it's not going to work. And it did not work at all against Kentucky. But the last SEC matchup, we got a lot of them. They definitely proved their point. The regular season was not a fluke. But Florida taking on Maryland. Maryland's got the biggest name in the coaching search world right now. There, everyone's saying Kevin Willard's going to leave, but he's got a game to play. And Florida, they haven't really looked. I haven't seen a game this year where I've thought, oh wow, they don't look very good, and I don't see it happening in this one. But what Maryland's got is they've got 5 guys who can play really hard, but I think Florida's depth is going to give them an issue. What do you see, Joey?
Yeah, I really liked Maryland as a kind of sleeper 4 seed that could really make a run if they got the right draw. And I think they got the wrong draw. Obviously, they got the Colorado State game, and you would imagine that would be a win for them. But Florida, I think, is the best team in the country. I don't think I'm going to mince words on that. Like, look at their front court. Nobody's got a front court like that. Nobody's got bodies like that. Everyone talks about having waves of bodies. Florida's got it like nobody else does, and have one of the better guards in the league, if not the best guard in the league, and Walter Clayton. Elijah Martin is really proving to be the guy that they needed. He's a bulldog. He defends. He makes the big dunks, gets the crowd involved. I think Florida's the best team in the country, and I do really like Maryland. I really like the backcourt of Jacoby Gillespie and Rodney Rice, and Derek Queen's obviously Derek Queen, and it's going to be an NBA player for a long time, but man, I would have a really hard time picking anybody over Florida, even a team like Duke or Auburn at this point.
Yeah, and I mean they've had a chip on their shoulder since the national media tried to cancel their coach in the beginning of the year, and I think they've kind of like at this point Florida's got so many different storylines to feed off of. It's going to be tough to beat them, and on the court obviously they've got talent as well. That's a tough draw for anybody. I admittedly grew up a Gators fan. People who listen may know that, so I'm not rooting for them, but if they win, why not? That'd be cool. But I want to. One of the big storylines, at least I've seen, is people trying to say that because there's no mid majors here in the Sweet 16, that college basketball is cooked. NIL's ruined everything. And while I see arguments as to why NIL has caused issues, I don't think it's ruined college basketball. I saw McNeese jump into the stands. You saw Lenny Acuff have the best season for Lipscomb, even though it ended in a loss in the first round. I mean, I don't think Lipscomb fans are crying about that, and they might be, but it's not the end of the world. And so I'm curious, Joey, from your coverage of the mid majors, and do you think that are we never going to see a Cinderella run again, or is there just a chance that the top of the top was just really good this year?
I think the top of the top was just really good. Like we mentioned, Maryland's a 4 seed, and I don't think Maryland is 4 seed good. I think Maryland's better than a 4 seed, maybe by a somewhat significant amount. Um, I just look at the top seeds. And I'm like, who is going to beat Auburn? Who's going to beat Florida? Not a mid major, and I don't think that's indicative of the state of the sport right now. I mean, Robert Morris almost beat Alabama, and I look at last year too. Remember when Jack Golke hit like 8 fadeaway threes and beat Kentucky? That can totally happen again. I think a Cinderella run is nowhere out of the question. I mean, you saw some last year. You saw Yale beat Auburn in the first round. I think the teams this year, this is a weird year because the teams are older and there's guys sticking around, but I think the talk of is NIL and the transfer portal ruining college basketball. It's like the transfer portal and NIL has been around for 3 years in its current state. Maybe it's more money being thrown around, but I don't think that much has changed in the last 3 years. The results might be different, but I don't think this is any glaring reflection on the sport. Maybe if it happens 3 years in a row, but I mean, it's just like not that much has changed in the last 2 years since there were Cinderellas making runs all the time. So I don't think there's anything to worry about. And I think people should just enjoy the basketball they're going to get the next few weeks because it's going to be really good. And I think it's going to quiet a lot of the noise about mid majors not being able to make runs. Although I do think there were some leagues that were down relative to what they generally are. Look at the ASUN, and even the bottom half of the MVC, I don't think it's as good as it normally is.
The AAC was awful this year. I mean, I watched a lot of American basketball, and that used to be a 3-bid league at times, 2-bid league. It wasn't even close this year. So that they got to work in the mid-major leagues on good scheduling. Obviously, you want to have that get to a point where you can get at larges. But I agree. I think we're all right. And it's much easier in basketball to get upsets, whether you have an off night from one team or, like you mentioned with Golke, a really on night from one team. And, I mean, for those who like to compare, it's much easier to get an off night in basketball than it is to have your group of 5 offensive line dominate a power offensive line in football. So
Mhm.
keep rooting for basketball, and it'll probably be all right. But Joey, thank you for taking some time to hop on with us. I want to let the people get some information. So you guys over at Vandy 247, that's a new thing, correct? You guys did a recent merger or something, and what's going on with that, and where can people find the offseason coverage?
Yeah, so we're at Vandy 24/7. There, we used to be at a different outlet, and then it was us competing with Vandy 24/7, which was run by one guy at that point, and we merged and we figured we'd get the best of both worlds with our coverage at that point. He had the best football recruiting stuff, we'd admit that, and I thought we had the best basketball stuff, and we covered baseball more heavily because he was strapped for time. So I think it's been cool to merge, and now it's kind of a one-stop shop for Vandy scoops, for Vandy feature stories and analysis and content. I think there's other outlets that can compete with us, but right now I don't see a better place for Vanderbilt coverage. And then some other places I'll give a quick shout to: Southeastern 16. That's where I do my SEC stuff. A lot of features on there, trying to make that more of a bigger picture place rather than game to game coverage, stuff that you can't get elsewhere. Hoops HQ, the national site, working with Seth Davis for. I'm sure you saw me talking to coaches in Charleston for that, and then Main Street, Tennessee, cover Lipscomb and Belmont for them. So finally, time to relax for me a little bit, Robbie. It's, not having to go to a game 3 nights a week anymore. Time to play some catch with my friends and go to class.
There you go. I mean, yeah, you can enjoy it for now, but the transfer portal will keep you busy. Keep an eye on Twitter. Don't put your phone down. You might miss something. You got to cover mid majors and Vandy, so I'm rooting for you. Enjoy the off time while you can get it.
For sure, there'll be from what I understand, there might be a big Vandy portal entry in the next day or two. So
Oh
keep your
boy.
eyes peeled for that, and we'll have some details on that on the board in the next couple days.
All right. Well, make sure to stay tuned to all of Andy 247's coverage from Joey and his crew. Joey, thanks once again. We're going to take a quick break right here. When we come back, Isaac Bourne from Mid Major Madness will be here with us talking. He'll give us better information as to why the sport is not cooked. But stay right here, folks. Welcome back, everybody, to the Bleacher Brothers Sports Network. If you missed the first half with Joey Dwyer of Hoops HQ, Vandy 247, make sure to hit the rewind button. Now, in the second half, we're joined by Isaac Bourne of Sports Illustrated's Mid Major Madness. Oh, wait, no, that's Mid Major Madness. They got rid of that tag. But nevertheless, for Mid Major Madness, it's Isaac Bourne. Isaac, how's it going?
It's good. Reason why the live stream I started like 2 minutes late is because I literally just got out of the shower. It's been a little weird not having basketball around, so I just did yard work all day. So that's what I've been doing out here in good old Murray, Kentucky, my hometown. So
Back in the streets of Murray, Kentucky. It sounds like Joey as well. Joey was talking about he doesn't have to cover Belmont, Lipscomb, and Vanderbilt anymore, so that's a break for him. But Isaac, where were you this past weekend? You were in the Lexington Regional for the round of 64. Who did you see, and how was that for you?
well, I think you start out in Lexington. I went out with optimism just because I knew that going into Lexington, the mid majors that really were going to make it far were not put into the region that I was going to go to. But I had some optimism. You had started out with Creighton, Louisville, which both are high major teams, but I knew it was going to probably be the most exciting one of the day. And I mean, it really wasn't. Creighton kind of came away with that one pretty quickly, but still it was a fun one. Got to talk to the new Murray State head coach Ryan Miller a little bit since he was the assistant at Creighton, but now he's headed on. He's probably a couple miles down the road from me now, somewhere in Murray, and looking at houses or probably looking at the portal more likely. But then after that we had Tennessee Wofford, and I liked it. I had a really fun time watching that game. No, sorry, it was Alabama State Auburn first, and that was a fun one. Alabama State played good defense, but Auburn came away with the win. And then Tennessee Wofford was really fun. Got to see the Terriers kind of put up a little bit of a fight, but the Volunteers kind of pulled away towards the end there. And then finally, you finished off with what I thought was going to be the most enticing one, Utah State versus UCLA. I really thought the Aggies had some kind of fight in them. They didn't, but it was a fun one. And then I had the decision to go back Saturday, and I said, no, thank you. I would rather come home and enjoy my spring break, and that I did.
That you did indeed. I feel you. I got spoiled. I got to see McNeese win at least one, but I was a little bit. And Omaha gave St. John's a tough battle in the first half, but they fell short, and McNeese ended up getting smacked by Purdue in the second round, so that was short for them. But you followed mid-major basketball for 3, 4 years now, probably longer. But after this round, are you concerned at all that we never may see a Cinderella run again?
I mean, obviously, I'm a little bit concerned. I think you look at it and you don't see any mid majors in the Sweet 16. You get a little sad because you want to see, especially when I cover mid major basketball and it's one of my biggest passions, not just basically saying my job is done for the year. Obviously, it's not, but basically saying what I do covering mid major teams is over for the year. It's kind of bittersweet. I think you can look at the NIT, and I mean, I am the UAB making a good run. I know you and I, big American guys, excited to see what they'll do, especially with North Texas getting that big win against Arkansas State the other night. But the NCAA tournament, when things that to be honest, when you look at games that really matter, mid majors are kind of done with that. And I mean, yeah, you can be a little sad, but I don't think it's time to pull out your Stephen A. Smith and say something like college basketball is dead or this will be the death of college basketball. I think just maybe temper your expectations a little bit. Let's calm down. Let's slow the jets down. I mean, you have to think we're in year 3 of the transfer portal and NIL. We have yet to see if any changes are going to be made, and I think changes are almost apparently going to be made. The NCAA has shown that they're willing to make changes. Obviously, they were willing to make changes because the NIL and transfer portal just opened the floodgates. But I feel like with enough outcry, obviously changes will be made with that to change things up in the whole broader landscape. But even then, I think it's bad. I don't think it's right to say that college basketball is dead because we don't have a 15 seed in the Sweet 16 this year, because I feel like that's supposed to be. I mean, if you're looking logistically, I think that's supposed to be a once in a lifetime event in the first place.
And I was talking about this with Joey. I mean, we were 9 points away from Robert Morris upsetting Alabama. That was a close game. It just happens sometimes. I mean, it's much easier and much more statistically probable for an upset to happen in college basketball, no matter how much money is involved with a certain power team, because it's not like football where you have defensive lines and it's basically a who's stronger competition up front. Power teams are going to win that more times than not. In basketball, sure, strength helps on rebounds and stuff like that, but it's not going to decide you a game. Sometimes it might. But look at St. John's. They had the best defense and rebounding in the country. They shoot bad, and they're now sitting on the couch. So I'm still hopeful for mid-major basketball in general, but I want to see next year be more positive. Speaking of which, though, speaking towards the next season, I want to ask about the transfer portal. We've got 1,100 players in the portal right now. That it's up from 700 last night. Jeff Goodman put out a tweet at I think it was 10 o'clock at night, said 700 something in the portal. That was a record. But now, less than 24 hours later, it's over 1,000. Isaac, do we think I mean, you cover mid-major more in the weeds than I do. What is NIL like at some of these, whether it's the Missouri Valley Conference or ASUN or Ohio Valley Conference, if you're even involved in that? Like, what does NIL look like at this level? And or is it more kind of on a school by school basis?
I think it's subjective wherever you go. I think obviously the Power Fives are going to have more money, or Power Fours now. I guess the Power Fours are going to have more money, and that's just due to donors and they're having more fans. But I think also you look at these bigger conferences. Murray State, obviously, I'm speaking from the hometown perspective, but I know when you look at the insider perspective, Murray State, some of these Missouri Valley teams have a lot more money than you might think they do, and I think it all goes down to showing that obviously there's going to be obviously there's going to be a difference, but I don't think it's as much as people think there are. Also, a lot of these numbers are kind of just being thrown out into the abyss. So you have to think there's never been an official legal document. There's never been official legal documents. There's never been any kind of official things that have really shown us how much money is going to these players because of the unregulation, like the lack of regulation for this transfer portal and NIL. We don't know. At the end of the day, you see the media say this is how much money this player is getting, and that's it. I think it all goes down to that's why there needs to be more regulations. I think when you look at a guy like Great Osborne, who had a great season last year and then goes in the transfer portal for a crap ton of money, there's no way for us to say that's how much money he got. And you see these players asking for $2-3 million now. Obviously, their players obviously want to go into it wanting that much money, but how much of that $2-3 million is guaranteed off the cuff? I think just like coaching contracts nowadays are thrown out and say this is how much money this coach is getting and these are their incentives. I think the players' contracts need to be more regulated as well. I think that just first goes with not just making these big collective money agreements just go down as there's just a bunch of sponsorships. I think that starts with the house agreement. I think that starts with just allowing programs. There's either two ways you go with it. Either you allow programs to pay players outright, or you find a way to get rid of this collective system that is keeping keeping teams from holding players accountable.
Yeah, it's definitely gonna be interesting to see how they kind of save mid majors a little bit, because I'm sure the TV revenue from these power conference teams is a lot. But at the end of the day, you see the outrage from people not having mid majors in the tournament. And eventually, the TV numbers will reflect that. You'll lose the casual viewer. You'll lose the guy whose team just got knocked out, but still watches anyway because there's an Oakland or an FAU or even a San Diego State. I mean, there would have been a lot more casuals rooting for Colorado State had they won, or New Mexico. So I'm interested to kind of see what they do to kind of combat that at that level. But I want to ask, kind of shifting more over the offseason a little bit, coaching hires. Obviously, with Drake, this year's darling mid major, they lose Ben McCollum to Iowa, but they've now had three straight coaches who've had success there. And I'm interested. Do you think Drake has? Are they kind of the Memphis of the Missouri Valley, or is their luck going to run out? And is there going to be a chance for an Indiana State, a Bradley, an Illinois State to potentially make a run next year?
I wouldn't say the Memphis of the Missouri Valley quite yet. I think when you look at Memphis, you've got a school that's a public university that's based in the middle of one of the bigger markets in America, and they have drastic success that hasn't just been recently, it's been throughout their history. So calling Drake the Memphis of the Missouri Valley might be a little much just because of the fact that, yes, they've had success, but it's been mostly recent success. I think you look at what Coach DeVries did there for years, and then now what Coach McCollum has done in the past year. I wouldn't call them that yet, especially with the fact that Memphis, I would believe, has more funding compared to the rest of the American Conference. Drake still plays in the Knapp Center, which is an on-campus site. I think when it comes to funding, I think their NIL budget is probably less than those of some other teams in the conference. I just think they do things and they run things very well over in Des Moines for the Bulldogs, and I'm really excited to see what comes up next for them because Coach McCollum was a slam dunk hire that no one expected to be this good. So I want to know where they go next because you go to the D2 level. Do you fish back into that well? I think you look at Coach Crutchfield at Nova Southeastern in Florida and you say, hey, you give him a look because Division II had produced Coach McCollum. What's saying that it can't produce another good coach from for a lower or upper lower level of mid-major? But as far as the Missouri Valley Conference, I would still consider most of these teams fairly equal. And so I'm interested to see where they go next, though, to add, because I think the conference is looking for an addition, especially with Missouri State leaving. But we'll see.
Yeah, that's a fun conference. I've fallen in love with Arch Madness over the past couple of years, and I'm rooting for Drake to be good. I'm rooting for Indiana State to be good. Last year they were not, but there's always a chance they could rebuild things. But this year's potential darling, before they lost in the round of 32, Colorado State, Nico Medved heads to Minnesota. I feel like the Mountain West is a very tough conference to consistently win in if you're not getting some type of continuity. I mean, you look at New Mexico with Patino, you look at San Diego State with Ducker. Um, do you think Colorado? I mean, they have the one guy on staff. I'm not going to know how to say his last name. Ali Farak Mensai hit the big shot for Northern Iowa in March Madness. But with Colorado State, what type of hire do you think a Mountain West team needs to make to be competitive right away?
Well, also, you mentioned in the Mountain West, Coach Patino most likely looks like he's heading to Villanova, too. I saw those whispers. So, Richard Patino heading across the nation as well. So, I think Utah State has just got their hands up excited because they're finally not losing a coach because Coach Calhoun signed for a long-term deal. But as far as Colorado State, I think you could go a plethora of different places. The Rams have a pretty good history of good college basketball for a while now. They've made the tournament. They've made the tournament off and on for the past couple of years. Last year they went out in the first four, but I wouldn't be surprised if they took a similar approach that the Missouri Valley has with a lot of their recent coaches. I wouldn't be surprised if they look at an assistant that might be good. I really like Murray State's coaching hire when they had Ryan Miller from Creighton, and you look at some of these other coaching trees that you could kind of dig into a little bit, maybe possibly look into that. But also, I mean, I think the Mountain West is just about as close as you get to a high major without considering them that. So I don't see a world where they don't look into some other mid-major coaches, and you look at an upper level hire, and you look at like I look at like a Shane Nichols, or I mean, before he signed on a couple days ago, I really liked like looking at Griff Aldrich from Longwood. He's a really great coach, and he's been very productive for the Lancers. But especially he signed on to be an assistant somewhere else recently, so I'd say he's off the table. But I wouldn't. I think Colorado State's got the ability to look into mid-major ranks because of the fact that they're probably the highest mid-major. I'd put them on the same level as the ACC as far as competitiveness, and so I wouldn't. I wouldn't be surprised if Colorado State went ahead and did something like that.
It'd be interesting to see. I mean, it's tough to be a mid-major fan right about now because you've got, if you look at FAU, for example. I mean, things went well this year, but they're not up to the way that Dusty had it, and so it's a thankless job coming in as a first-year head coach. I'm just interested to kind of see how the coaching side of things evolves over the next couple of years, as well as the NIL side of things, because at some point it just seems like there's going to be a breaking point. I don't know if it'll be with the coaches or the players, but at some point it's going to break. But Isaac, I want to hit with you before we break down here.
My battery pack died, so you don't get light from me anymore.
No, that's what I was wondering. I was like, is your computer about to
Yeah,
explode?
I don't get the beautiful light anymore. I had my ring light plugged into a battery pack, and it's dead. So.
Yeah. We still got you, and we'll cherish our time. But looking at some of the Sweet 16 games this weekend, I know you grew up in Kentucky, so you know kind of how deep Kentucky basketball goes a little bit. And the job that Mark Pope has done at Kentucky, turning it around, how if he wins this game, especially over Tennessee, coming back as an alumni, how big is that just for like Kentucky as a whole?
See, with family, with family members that are part of the Kentucky fandom, and I would consider at multiple times in my life part of the Kentucky fandom as well. It's more than anyone in Kentucky, or more than anyone outside of Kentucky could really comprehend. I think you look at Pope, and you see a guy that comes in with low expectations. No one really thought that he was going to be this type of coach coming in. Everybody actually, they were excited because he was an alumni, and I think credit to Mitch Barnhart, the AD, for making that decision to bring in alumni to at least make fans happy at the moment. But they had no idea how he was going to be coming into the season. Obviously, those transfer portal pickups that he got with Otega Owe and then Jackson Robinson and Amari Williams, I mean, it was really good to see that he was able to work in the portal. But no one really expected him to come out and have a team this successful off the bat. Obviously, the team fell a little bit later in the season. That has a lot to do with injuries and things like that. And a lot of people coming into the tournament thought that they weren't going to be that good. Maybe fans were just going to be happy with a win over Troy, and then maybe if they can take down Illinois, that's a good thing. But in Pope's first year, getting one tournament win was all Kentucky fans were really excited for. Obviously, with a big fan base like Kentucky, you're going to have fans that are going to get mad no matter what. They're going to say the season was a failure if Pope doesn't make it to the Sweet 16, because that's how Kentucky fans are, unfortunately. But Pope does it. He makes it to the Sweet 16. And now they're facing off against a Tennessee team that they've gone up against twice now and won both times. And so I think going into this game thinking that Kentucky's going to win is just as crazy as going into this one thinking that they have no chance. Thinking that Kentucky's going to win by a lot is just as much as thinking that they're going into this one thinking that they have no chance. Sorry. I almost said something wrong there. But the point is, I think that this one will be a fun one. I think Tennessee's never seen Lamont Butler before from Kentucky. I think he's a great defender, but he's been out for most of the season. So we'll see what that taped together, stitched together shoulder that he's got is able to do against a Zakai Ziegler. And I'm excited for it. I think it'll be great for the Kentucky fan base as a whole just to go up against a rival in the tournament. But it'll all just go down to we'll all wait and see what happens in Indianapolis.
I think that's a point a lot of people may not realize is that Tennessee hasn't seen Lamont Butler yet, and that's it's not something you see in the stat sheet, and you gotta watch the games to know that. So keep an eye out on that. But as you mentioned, Tennessee has experienced veteran guards as well. I mean, FAU faced off against Zakai Ziegler and Lamont Butler in the same year. How about that? And almost beat both of them. But we won't talk about what Lamont Butler did to FAU. But and looking at what Cal did though with Arkansas. I mean, how about that? I talked about this with Joey, and Cal was your Kentucky coach when you grew up. So, from what you know about Cal, do you think he was? Did you think he was going to be able to kind of architect this turnaround here this season, or are you surprised that he kind of didn't give up as some Kentucky fans think he did over the past couple of years at Kentucky?
I think first and foremost, I'm just so happy for him, just to see him go and succeed in Arkansas, where Kentucky fans were harassing the heck out of this dude. And I mean, I wouldn't say he didn't. I mean, obviously he didn't deserve the harassment, but at the same time, it wasn't merited. It was merited. Kentucky was having some down years for a while, but then he goes to Arkansas, and then he builds a team with the NIL money that was given to him by the AD Hunter check for the Razorbacks. And I really think that the breakup between Kentucky and Cal is about as mutual of a breakup as you could have gotten. I think this is just as happy. I think both sides are just as happy as anyone could have thought they would have been at this point. You look at the Razorbacks, and they've got a great team that started off slow but was able to come back and beat some really good teams right when it matters. And now those former Kentucky players are succeeding, and Kentucky itself is succeeding, and the fans are happy on both sides. Especially when you've got two programs that were kind of playing worse than expected for a while, and then they both are now playing well. It's just good to see. And so I'm happy for him. I'm excited. Didn't expect this out of Arkansas in year one, but I mean this was a great surprise.
It's huge. The biggest thing that I like is Cal's gone there as a Kentucky guy, and he's embraced their alumni roots really well. He's got Nolan Richardson, their old head coach, on FaceTime after the game, so he's done it the right way. He didn't come in there and try to do things his way. He did things the Arkansas way, and I think that's kind of helped him and kind of regroup the fan base from some of those early games where people were sending pictures of empty second decks and whatnot. And I bet if they played a game at home today, that place would have a line wrapped back to John Tyson's chicken farm. So I think Arkansas is set up for some success over the next couple of years, and I don't know if I'm rooting for him, but after covering Cal last week, I'm definitely I don't know. He's just got that personality. You want to see him have success. So I'm cautiously optimistic that they'll beat Texas Tech this weekend. And if they do, who knows? I mean, Cal's been here so many times. At some point, it's come down to experience, and those who have been there before may have a bit of an edge. So we'll keep an eye out on that. We got about 4 minutes until our next show comes on here. Isaac, before we get out of here, I want to get your prediction on the spot. If nothing else happens and things are the way they are in this round, who do you have winning the national championship?
Earlier this week, I would have said Florida. If you look at all my brackets, I have Florida winning. But sorry, you put me on the spot here.
I did, folks. I'm sorry, I did put Isaac on the spot. I didn't tell him this one was coming.
I'm gonna stay with Florida. Actually, I'm gonna stay with
He's
Florida.
staying with the Gators.
Auburn looks good, but not as good as I would want them to be right now. Florida looks good, but obviously I don't think they're as good as I would want them to be. I think that UConn loss or that UConn win was just a little too close for my comfort, but I don't know. I can't bet against the Gators right now, and they've still got a pretty decently easy route. Obviously, nothing's easy left with all these good teams in the Sweet 16, but I mean, they got to go through a Maryland team that obviously they'll keep it close, but Maryland barely got through Colorado State. Meanwhile, Florida, I mean, their worst loss of the season is at Kentucky.
Mm.
So when you look at it like that, this Florida team doesn't lose very often to bad teams or to teams that are worse than them.
No, they don't. And, the thing is, they have a lot of depth. And in March, that's going to help them. These games get physical. You need guys who can come in and give a spell, but there can't be drop off. You got to be able to come in and give a solid boost. And the only other team I see with that same type of bench right now is Purdue. I think Purdue's bench is really solid right now, and I think if Purdue can kind of muster out some of the demons from last year, I think they got a shot. I like covering them last round as well, and we'll see. I mean,
Makers are
there's
just
some
so
good games.
I think Braden Smith Braden Smith might be my pick for the best point guard in the nation. I've got him over Walter Clayton right now.
Yeah, I'm rooting for some good basketball this weekend. Um, if you follow me, you'll see me. I got coverage this weekend for Bracketeer from Atlanta, so make sure to check that out. Isaac, where can the people find your coverage? Because I have a feeling the off season for somebody who covers the mid major ranks is the way you do is going to be nonstop 24/7.
Well, but I've just been retweeting a bunch of transfer portal announcements today because my phone has been absolutely just burning to heck because of how many notifications I'm getting. But you can find me at IsaacBourne _ on Twitter, and then just look up my name. You'll see my name on the Mid Major Madness website at midmajormadness.com. And other than that, I mean, you can follow me on Instagram if you want, but I don't really post basketball stuff on there. It's just kind of like pictures of me.
Yeah, no one wants to see that. I'm sorry, Isaac, but definitely check out
Got a face for
the
radio right here.
somebody check out the Twitter coverage. I think that'll do everyone well. But folks, thanks so much for hanging out with us here this afternoon. For Isaac Bourne, I'm Robbie Lastella, and if you missed our first half, Joey Dwyer from Vandy 247 hopped on with us to talk all the SEC storylines as well. So jam-packed episode. Thanks for tuning in. For the Bleacher Brothers Sports Network, I'm Robbie Lastella. I'll see you next week. Stay right here for more content from the Bleacher Brothers Sports Network.